Hello, I'm a little under the weather at the moment, so I thought I would have a day on the sofa with a cup of tea and maybe some Brontë vision to make me feel better. So I thought we'd have a look at my favourite Brontë drama and maybe let's look into it into a bit of depth. Let's have a chat about it and see what we all think. So snuggle down, get yourself a brew and let's have a look at this drama. So the Brontë vision I'm going to watch today is the 2016 drama To Walk Invisible.
When a man writes something, it's what he's written that's judged. When a woman writes something, it's her that's judged.
Bramwell, he's been drinking.
You owe money.
You best put up then, huh?
Take him.
Of course we're not going to use our real names. But must there be men's names? We must walk invisible.
I think you should tell Papa about Jane Eyre.
I am very proud of you.
Miss
Brontë.
To Walk Invisible on BBC One.
So I've watched this a few times, but I haven't watched it for a little while, so it'll be good to get back into it and have another look at it. What I want to do is I want to look at 5 things, main things. Number 1, the actors and the actresses. Were they suited to the roles? Did they do well? Were they well cast? That sort of thing. Number 2 is the setting and the props and the scenery. Did we feel that it was well done, authentic? And have a look at that at whole. We know, was there any wobbly walls as people walk by? Number 3 is the story. Do we think it's authentic? I mean, obviously we weren't there, so we don't know for sure 100% what had happened, but we do know that from biographies and research and Charlotte's letters that a lot of information was gathered. So we know a fair amount. So I want to know whether this film or this drama stuck to that, or was there a bit of Disney and Hollywood put in? Did they put a few bits in just to make it a good story? So there's that. Number 4 is costumes. I love my historic garments. So I'm really looking forward to looking at this with a sort of a keen eye and a sharp eye to see if there's anything that's amiss. Were they authentic? Were they well made? Did they suit the time period? Did they pick garish colours which weren't available at the time? So that's something I'm looking forward to. I'm going to have a look at that. And number 5, I can't remember. Let's just call it other. Put it in the other category because I can't remember what I was going to say for 5. So anything else that I feel needs to be mentioned, I'll pop it under number 5. So I'm going to top up my brew and I'm going to snuggle back down and I'm going to watch this through. And I will give you some of my opinions and highlights and thoughts as we go along. So if you've got a brew, I can't see where mine's gone. If you've got a brew, then top it up and come with me and let's see what we think. So it's a bit later on. I've finished watching the drama. I'm a bit cold now, hence the blanket. I thought I'd talk to you about the first section I wanted to discuss, which was the actors and the actresses and how I felt they were. So we've got Charlotte Brontë, which was played by Finn Atkins. I thought her height was brilliant. They really got that right, because that's what annoyed me in the past. The actresses for Charlotte are always tall, and of course we know she wasn't. And I think she came across really well. The consistency with the glasses annoyed me. 1 minute she needed them to read, next minute she didn't. So that was annoying. But I thought she did really well. The Yorkshire accent was the only thing, and I think it's the accents which bothered me throughout this whole programme. And that's probably the only thing I'm really going to be negative about at the moment. Is that I really felt they would have had a stronger mix of Yorkshire and Irish, considering they spent a lot of time at home with their father. And of course, they're surrounded by people like Tabby with very strong Yorkshire accents.
What happened? You heard the shouting.
Had my pillow over my ears so I didn't catch the details.
Look at you.
So he's been knocking about by way of punishment. He's packed off on holiday for a week with Martha's father.
Packed off on holiday for a week or got shut off for a few days. All a question of how you might choose to look at it. Tabby.
So I kind of felt the accents could have been a bit stronger, but of course it has to be available, accessible for everybody. And I know the Yorkshire accent can get quite hard. I mean, I live with the Yorkshiremen, I get that. So it can be hard to understand sometimes. So I understand why they toned it down.
What you brought me this morning? You seem to have a fairish load of stuff.
Yeah, well, there's a variety in there.
But this feels like a bake. Oh, well, I'll let you up meet and see, shan't I?
That is
anyhow, I'm middling a walk to the Harris, so I'll let you get on. See ya.
But I think Finn, she did a great job. There was a lot of lines to learn. She did huge, long passages of acting in what looked like one take. So, you know, hats off to her. So that was Charlotte. Then we've got Charlie Murphy, who was Anne. And, you know, I think spot on. It's exactly how I imagine Anne. Quiet spoken, not too over the top, very happy to sit and listen and take it all in. So I was pleased about her. And then we have Chloe Pirrie, who played Emily. Now, I thought Emily's character, or Emily was portrayed in this very well. I loved the fact that when she was having arguments with Charlotte about stealing the poems from her room, the language that she used, as in, you know, the speed of it, to me, that's exactly how I would imagine Emily to have been. She had a lot of words in her head that wanted to come out, and they wanted to come out very quickly.
You disgust me. You can't begin to imagine how much. You stay out of my room, and you don't speak to me. You don't speak to me generally, and you don't speak to me specifically about your misguided, tedious, grubby little publishing plans.
I thought she did a really good job. She had the best Yorkshire accent, I think, out of everyone. Bramwell Brontë, played by Adam Nagartist. Now, that must have been a really hard character to play, because most of the time he's either crying, upset or drunk. So it must have been difficult, but I think he did a very good job.
You're always looking at me with your stupid empty faces. Just please stop looking at me! Stop!
I'm not 100% sure if that's how I see Bramwell, but I'm not sure if that's because I've got a slightly different opinion about Bramwell, and I don't just see him as this drunk person. I'm not entirely sure, so can't be completely 100% about that one. I think I need to think about it a bit more. And of course, then we've got Patrick, which was played by Jonathan Pryce. To be honest, Patrick doesn't have a huge amount of lines in this when you actually watch and listen and, you know, take notice. He is there and he obviously has lines, but not as many as you would expect. Again, his Irish accent, I think, needed to be stronger. I know Patrick would have had more time in the UK than he would have done in Ireland, because obviously he went to Cambridge and everything, but I do think his accent would have been stronger than it was portrayed in this. So obviously then we've got other characters that were involved, like Tabby. Again, I think Tabby's Yorkshire accent would have been so strong and hard to understand. And again, she wasn't in this, but like I said about Emily's accent and the others, I think that they did it this way on purpose so everyone could understand, because it is a difficult accent. When they get going and they talk quickly, these Yorkshire people, who knows what they're talking about. Oh, I need my tea. My throat's getting all sore. So, yes, let's go on to section number 2. Let me find my tea first. So, section number 2, which was the set and the scenery. Oh my goodness, how amazing was the scenery. They recreated the house, the whole parsonage, because obviously you can't film there. It's just there's too much stuff, it's too delicate, and you wouldn't be able to get a camera crew in there in that small amount of space and still be able to keep it authentic looking. So they rebuilt the house, and I think it took something like 12 weeks or something, and they built it up in Penistone car park, right on the top. So you've got the beautiful views, which have been more authentic for the time, because obviously the trees have grown up around the parsonage now, but at the time it was a lot more open. So the buildings were all made out of wood and then painted and, you know, decorated as if they were stone. And they recreated, I think, the house, the church, the reading room, a barn, and also the graveyard. The other thing I wanted to mention was the detail. I was watching one particular part, again I'll put a screenshot up, where Patrick is asking Bramwell a lot of questions, and behind him you can see the door in the dining room, and there's even the metal brackets that are in the corners, which I've seen for myself in the parsonage on their doors. So someone has really gone round and taken every little detail and reproduced it in the set. It's brilliant. The camera angles, I know this is kind of set in scene, might not fall into camera angles, but at one point Charlotte and Emily are talking at the window, was watching the bells being delivered, and the conversation is going backwards and forwards between the two. And if you look, the camera, when it's Charlotte talking, the camera's at Emily's height looking down at Charlotte, and when it's the other way around, it's low down looking up at Emily. And it's really clever because it makes you feel very much you are part of this conversation. And I just think things like that you don't notice until you really stop and look, and it makes you feel more involved and part of the action. So I thought the camera work in this was brilliant. The scenery, I mean, it's breathtaking, all of it. You know, they've got some really wonderful shots. You know, you can imagine the drones flying around, getting some great angles, and I just thought brilliant. And of course Haworth being recreated how it would have been in the time with dirt and mud. And there's one scene where Bramwell walks along, walking up the main street, and he falls over and he lands in the ground, you know, on the ground, and he obviously gets something disgusting on his hands. And he wipes it on a nearby fleece that's outside a shop. And that really gave the idea that, you know, he looked pretty filthy himself. He wasn't even prepared to wipe that on his trousers. So I think that was a great little shot to show us how disgusting the main street would have been. I thought what they did to create the main street, you know, using an actual modern day street with signs and lights and things, and obviously reproduced these frontage to make it look like 1840s. Brilliant. So that was most of the scenes. There's some great night scenes as well with the moon. Again, brilliant. And I'll put some screenshots for you to see. Let's have a quick drink. So, section number 3, the story. At the time this drama was set was between about 1845 and about 1847, 1848. Obviously, this was the period when the sisters decided that they would try and get their work published, and therefore what made the best bit of the drama. But unfortunately, it was during this period that Bramwell really suffered the most with his addictions and his drinking. So it didn't obviously portray him at all well, but I think there was parts of Bramwell that I wished were shown. The Bramwell before the addiction really took over. The intelligent Bramwell, the happier Bramwell, because obviously he had issues throughout his life. So I'm not saying that they started on one particular day, but there was more to Bramwell than the drunken, selfish man that you see in this drama. I think it was very well researched. I think Sally Wainwright did a great job in keeping it close to what we know is possible. And it's portrayed, her research, her knowledge, her effort is, I think, paid off personally. I think it was a very good representation of what happened around that time. Obviously, you know, times jumped along quite quickly. It had to fit into 2 hours. So there was a lot of stuff that wasn't necessarily shown. I don't quite understand why Ellen Nussey was the only friend mentioned. And there's Mary Taylor, her other friend from school, and it seemed that she wasn't even mentioned. She never wrote her in any of this, so I don't know. But of course, Bramwell's addiction had a huge impact on the whole family, and I think that's why it was important to show this part of the story, because it was another inspiration. Anne herself says in the drama, is it okay to write about things indicating upstairs where Bramwell was led at the time. And I think that played a big part in their writing, and of course it comes across. So section number 4, costumes. I really appreciate the detail and design, so thank you. So many dramas nowadays are someone's interpretation of what it kind of should have been like around the time, not mentioning anything particular Bridgerton, but the designer Tom Pye, and he had an advisor and someone that worked with him called Eleanor Houghton. I hope I said that right. You can see the detail, you can see the research has gone into this. The pin tucks, the shoulder seams, the drop shoulders for Emily, who wore slightly old-fashioned, and then of course you've then got Charlotte, who's got this more elegant look with the lower waist. That comes into the V. That was very much of its time, and Charlotte would have seen these sort of fashions when she was in Brussels. I know Emily was in Brussels, but Emily really didn't care so much, whereas Charlotte did. And you can see the difference, the slight difference, but it's noticeable between the two characters. Obviously Charlotte's very pristine, she's wearing a brooch and she's always got white collars, whereas Emily is a little bit more roughy-tufty. She's got dirty hems and her sleeves are rolled up, and I just think that is brilliant, because that's so what you would expect from that time period, and based on what we know about Emily, Charlotte and Anne. Anne was so petite in this. Her waist was minute, but I think it worked. I think the outfits or the costumes just worked brilliantly. And I'd like to point out there's a particular scene that I noticed that Anne is sat writing, and Charlotte comes in and she's got her feet up on the fender around the fire, and I'm looking at the dress thinking, I recognise that. And then I realised I've made a skirt with the same fabric as Anne Bronte's dress. Obviously not the real Anne Bronte, but I felt quite chuffed about that. So how's that? So yeah, I thought the costumes were done very, very well. And again, they weren't over the top. They had Emily's lightning dress in, which was brilliant. And I've tried to do some screenshots of a close-up of that so you can see what they've used, how they've managed to do it. So I take my hat off to the costume designers and say, well done. I think you did an excellent job. The designer, Tom, also did Gentleman Jack. Again, spot on costume. So yeah, I think Sally did really well bringing him on board. So top marks. So number 5, this was my other section, and I'm glad I called it that because there's a few things I spotted I wanted to talk about. The first one, there's a real beautiful shot in it where all the sisters are sat around the table writing, and the camera pans down at their level and you get to see them sitting there scribbling away. And to me, whenever I go into the dining room at the parsonage and I look at it, I always picture this. I picture them sat there writing, and this particular scene is captured brilliantly. And so yeah, I wanted to include that in my other section. The other thing I wanted to mention is there is a shot where Charlotte is sat in her rooms in Manchester when she's with her father and he's having his eye procedure done afterwards in their hotel. And she's leant over and she's thinking about just about starting that first line of Jane Eyre. And when you actually look at it, it reminds me of the Penguin edition front cover of the artwork of the woman with the dark hair and the collar and the dress. And when you compare the two, which I'll put up on screen for you to see, it's so close, it's beautiful. And also that is Jane Eyre's, the book is Jane Eyre as well, so that image. So that worked really well. So I wanted to mention that in my other section. What else did I want to mention? The poem that Emily reads, or Emily recites to Anne while sat on the moors. always brings a lump to my throat because it's said with such passion and with the scenery. It's just, yeah, again, you have to watch this to appreciate the full length of it. It's the No Coward Soul Is Mine poem, and it's, yeah, just beautiful.
The first line is, it goes, no coward soul is mine, no trembler in the world's storm-troubled sphere. I see heaven's glory shine, and faith shines equal, arming me from fear. Take your time.
So the other thing is, yes, I'm pleased they did it. They put a lot of rain in the drama because we do get rain here in Yorkshire. If it's not windy or snowing, it's nearly always raining. These sunny days are very rare. As I can confirm today, here we are in July. I'm sat on the sofa with a blanket and it's raining outside. There's one particular part in the film or in the drama when Bramwell is particularly ill and he's obviously dying and he's been coughing and kept Patrick awake. So Emily comes into the room and the first thing he says is, I feel sick, and she passes him a bowl, and as he's sick it splashes on her and it's blood on her face. And I think that's all we needed to see to know that the end is coming. I think it was a very moving shot, because she takes her time to wipe it off and you can see the dread and the fear in her face. And I think that was a perfect way of portraying that Bramwell was deteriorating quickly. So again, hats off to Sally Wainwright for that, because I think she did a great job with that delicate issue. And while we're on the subject, of course, the death of Bramwell is heartbreaking. After he's died and he's led there and he's finally calm and quiet after weeks, months of being agitated, upset. But it shows that each of the characters are grieving individually. You see Patrick in his room, you see Charlotte in the dining room. And I think it just highlights the point that they were all different characters and they all dealt with it differently. And it was a huge struggle, even though he made their lives really difficult towards the end. They still had lost their brother. And I think the view of the children when they were being children, and he lost his flame, he's lost his spark, and they said, you can go now, just before he dies. I think, again, you have to see it to appreciate what I'm talking about right here. Well, a very moving way to show Bramwell's death. So, right. Yeah, I really enjoyed the story anyway. What am I talking about now? Am I just babbling? Mary, Mary, Mary. Sorry, my throat. Give me a second. Right, I'm okay. Oh, hold on. Oh, my throat is so sore. Sorry. So I think I've gone over everything that I felt really needed to be discussed, but there is so much of this drama that I haven't touched upon. So if you've seen the drama and you've got any thoughts or comments, please do let me know. Put them in the comments below so that I can have a read, because I'd love to know what you think of it. Have you seen it? Do you want to see it? I've had a look and it is available to rent from Amazon Prime, Apple TV, and I think YouTube are doing a paid for rental thing. So there are still ways to watch it, and of course you could go old school like me and get the DVD. It's a 2-hour long and you will very much feel like you've stepped back in time for those 2 hours, so I certainly recommend it. So I'm going to leave it here for now, and hopefully my next adventure I will be back to my normal going out and about, and of course I'll take you with me. So please do the whole likey, subscribey thing and share, because it really does help me out and it lets YouTube know we want to watch more Brontë content. And I will see you next Friday for more Brontë adventures. All right, until then, take care, have a good weekend. Bye.